Hello there. I am just going to, there you go, that's what we are. For those of you who are here because you thought we were having a convention about breakdancing or breaking, sorry. We're actually going to be talking about people who have, like Raygun, totally reinvented the genres that they're participating in. And I'm very thrilled to be able to introduce you to three fantastic Australian talents. Just to let you know who the hell I am, I'm Jonathan Kneebone. I started a company called the Glue Society about 26 years ago. We're an art and directing collective, and to some extent, we're guilty for trying to do things that are really difficult and impossible to define as well. But what I wanted to use this session to do is to pick the brains of the people who have really reached international acclaim for doing just that. And the first person who is the playwright extraordinaire, Susie Miller. Let's welcome her to the stage. I'm not going to embarrass Susie by going through all the awards that she's won, but basically her work has won Tonys and Olivias, and also achieved huge success on Broadway and in the theatre in the UK, and obviously here in Australia. But playwright, lawyer, librettist, screenwriter, too many works in progress. I don't even know how she found time to come and sit and be with us for this time, so it'd be great to pick her brains. Yeah. Just to have a really eclectic group, we're going to go from law to food, and I want to welcome Josh Nyland, chef extraordinaire, to the stage. He's currently the Good Food Guide's Chef of the Year. He's someone who's reinventing the whole world of fish cookery, and to great acclaim, to such an extent that a book he's written has just been awarded the James Beard Award, and he's getting trophies in Madrid and in France for his ingenuity and innovation. So welcome, Josh. And last but by no means least, I want to welcome performer extraordinaire Tim Minchin to the stage. I didn't even know how to summarize Tim's, whatever to call you, because it seems to be you're good at everything. So we'll just say creative, entrepreneur, writer, performer, artist, singer, songwriter. We'll go through that later, all the things you've done, but everything tends to be something that wins an award or recognition or gets everyone singing your praises just as much as you sing wonderful things back to them. How's that for a turn of phrase? That's just off the cuff.
That's absolutely fine, yeah. Thanks.
All right. Anyway, welcome everyone.
Thanks, Jonathan.
So I think we just need to dive straight in and get into this. The situation that I think is fascinating to consider is why, when everyone else is happy to just be a creative person and make something or paint something and put it in their toilet, why do we sort of between us have this crazy passion to want to try and change the world or change the discipline we're in or try and change the field we're in? Why do we take that on? Why do we make it hard for ourselves? And having spoken a little bit before this chat, you've all got very different answers to that question. So maybe we just really quickly go through what brought you to the notion of wanting to do more than just make yourself happy and try to change it for everyone else.
I reckon the kind of the archetype of the sort of thing you're talking about is old mate fish guy. So I reckon we should hear from Josh, because you're the one that properly deconstructed old ideas.
All right. bit of a warm-up now for you.
Yeah, why?
I can
Josh?
come with you to your next gig and I'll warm you up there too. No, so the...
You should see him massage his fish. It's like sexy as fuck.
I asked if I could bring a fish.
I'll be your fish. Where do you need me? Splay me.
All right, thanks. No, so, I mean, this conversation that we're having was so exciting, firstly, to read in an email. I'm like, oh, my people, because, you know, we do things the hard way, and it's not convenient. It's incredibly laborious. It's, you know, I was talking to my wife, Julie, this morning. Is there a session after this one for the partners of the creatives to come up? And so, because I feel like it's, you know, they wear the same, I don't know, not a burden, but there is that shared kind of feeling around the whole thing. So for us, it was very much, I followed a basic path of how to be a chef from, you know, age 15, getting into the profession and going through all the training and trying to get the foundations right so that I had a broad understanding of not just fish, but from pastry and savouries and everything. And then you make the decision, which, again, not overly convenient or easy, to leave home at age 17 to then move to Sydney, because I felt like that was where the opportunities were, where I could push myself more professionally and probably just mature myself a little faster as well. And so I ended up in Sydney and tried to position myself alongside chefs that weren't just good technically at cooking food, but had attributes about them that made them special. So somebody like Luke Mangan that ran Glass Brasserie, I worked for him when they first opened, and I found it fascinating to work with Luke that he could have food being served in the air, on a boat, in a restaurant, on a train, and everywhere else, and be at the Today Show, you know, talking on camera. And I'm like, how is all this happening? And it was fascinating to me to be privy to the inside world of what that looked like, and then to go work for somebody like Peter Doyle at S Restaurant, to, you know, have somebody that was very disciplined to go surfing in the morning, do his yoga, see his wife, see his kids, then come to work. And then teach us very intentionally how to prepare an artichoke, how to make a sauce properly, how to, you know, put your left foot forward when you're carving lamb and your right foot to the side when you're cutting a pigeon. And it was fascinating, all these little nuances and details that I don't think many other people were considering or watching, but it was something that I just loved paying attention to. And then fast forward into the whole fish thing. I worked for somebody, I worked for Stephen Hodges at Fishface, who was just incredibly gifted technically cooking fish, and a gentleman that was so passionate about fish that passion turned into rage a lot of the times, and for guests that would go to Fishface and not eat their fish properly would be met with, you know, some physical, you know, attending to and hostility, yeah. But, you know, seeing how that worked and seeing how his mind worked, especially after a couple of drinks, was quite...
It'd be amazing, Susie, if you could do that and you observe an audience member not watching your play correctly, and you could just go out and punch them. That'd be amazing. I feel like you would do that if you were allowed.
But then when got the opportunity to open our own business, and this is something we talked about before, I had a business partner leading up to opening the restaurant, and the night before signing the lease, Julie and I made the decision that we were going to do it ourselves. So we send the email and say, I'm really sorry, we're going to do this by ourselves, sorry. And then within 2 minutes, we had the email back saying, no problem, good luck, all the best, here's all the details, pay for my lawyer, that kind of thing. And then from there, you know, it was a couple of months later that we opened the doors to St. Peter on a very slim budget, and we did everything we could to make it the best version of what was in our heads. But the best part was that we had, you know, we could make the decisions. We could decide that we wanted to dry age fish and that we wanted to make things that other people weren't making because I believed in it, and it was born from so many creative situations that don't link properly to, you know, this perfect package that is St. Peter, but they're all just tinkering away. And if there was an investor or a partner there, they would probably, you know, pick what would work, or the salmon that needed to go on the menu that gets all the people to come rather than just the smallest viable audience. So,
and I think something happened though when you got your first invoice.
Yeah, I think paying for $4,500 worth of fish when the first day comes, like you get the invoice for fish and only fish, no vegetables, no wine, nothing. But you spend $4,500 on fish for the first invoice. It scares the shit out of you. Like you realise then that you need to be busy, you need to be full, you need to get the full return back from what this fish is, and that then drove the social media, you know, all the photos that I would take of fish hanging against the wall and dishes, and so you motivate yourself and you work so hard to get people to enjoy what you do, but 6 months into that you realise that the maths don't add up. You need a certain amount of labour and you need a certain quality of ingredients to then attract people to come. And when the wage bill hits, you know, 48, 50%, and the food bill hits 38%, it's pretty bad numbers. Yeah. And so for us then, our problem was that, and the solution then came in the form of innovation and creativity, which was then to think of fish more as meat, and think of myself more as a butcher of fish, less of a monger, and to literally proceed in that direction. And by doing that, then it gave me guardrails about how I wanted to work and how I wanted the team to work. And by the end of the year, we had a full restaurant and we had a lot of very, you know, New York Times and all these amazing people writing things about us that gave me greater clarity with the direction that we were going in.
Yeah.
So.
That desire to believe in yourself and know what you potentially were capable of, though, I think we should come back to that later. But it's interesting that the thing that drove you to innovate was economics, really.
Yeah, like
almost that was the challenge.
You do get that feedback coming in, like, oh wow, are you a fisherman as a kid, and you know, are you out to save the whales? Are you are you an activist? Are you all of these eco warrior kind of conversations start, but at the bare bones of it all, I was really scared that if economically I don't make this work, then yeah, we're in trouble. And so where there's a tension on economics, there's usually that linear path that carries the ethics next to it. And so that became the almost perfect storm where people looking in could see two quite unique kind of things happening. So
we should pass the baton.
Okay, Tim, mention everybody.
Well, I listen because the way you asked the question, Jonathan, was sort of what compels you to do things differently, and what I hear when I listen to Josh talk is just survival, and that certainly, it's survival paired with all you've got. Like when your back's against the wall, you know, trying to open a restaurant or just trying to make a living, and you throw everything you've got into it, then it probably by necessity comes out a bit different, because you're having to find space in a crowded marketplace and you have a unique set of inputs. I mean, Josh he named some of those inputs, and he will have, you know, travelled a different journey. That meant that when that $4,500 invoice came in, he is like Slumdog Millionaire. You know, he had the answers, and he didn't know that all his life he'd been answering a question that was going to come in the future. And that's certainly how I feel about my career. I got very, very things started going really well for me after about 12 years of just doing fucking gigs with no intention, and that's sort of what I write about.
Well, the thing I particularly resonated was, you wrote this: the thing I am best in the world at is being a science-obsessed, uber-rhymey, polemicist, pianist, singer-songwriter, satirist, wanker. Right?
Yeah.
And my
really
interpretation of that, apart from it being very funny, is
it's true.
No, but it's basically lean into who you really are, and how original that is.
Which of course suffers from hindsight bias and survivor bias, because me, with my successful career, going, just be the full true you, is all, you know, other full true people might just have no career whatsoever because it might not add up to something that the market wants at the time. And same with Josh, and I guess same with Susie. I mean, you
and in fact, the market changed for me.
Yeah.
So when I first became a playwright, I remember I was a lawyer first, and I was an outsider lawyer, but I wrote my first play because what I was seeing working with young kids in the streets of King's Cross was really affecting me so profoundly, and I could also see this sort of invisible community. So I wrote about that because I needed to, really. And then it went on at the Old Fitz, and the night before opening night I thought I might have to move to Melbourne if Stephen Dunn hates me and writes an awful review, which he's now disappeared. I don't know what happened to Stephen Dunn, but I lived in fear of Stephen Dunn. I can't tell you. I used to say to my husband, if Stephen Dunn doesn't like it, we have to move. Where are we going to go? We'll go to Tasmania. And then, standing on Taylor Square in those days, you stood on Taylor Square waiting for the reviews to come out, standing there freezing, and when they came out, not being able to read it, but my producer read it, said, "It's great." And I was like, I love Stephen Dunn.
That's what chefs used to do as well.
Oh, is that right? We might have bumped into each other, even if I was standing on the wrong foot to dissect a pigeon. I mean, God,
I remember
I've never
quite
thought
a few
of anything
tears
like
on that strip.
Yeah, hasn't there? But I mean, and that first play then transferred to the Opera House, went really well, and I was really proud of it. But the thing was, it was a bit of a fluke as well. It was just me doing. And when it first went into rehearsals, I remember an old actor that was in it, and there were 9 actors in it, saying to me, "Oh, I went home last night and said to my wife, this bloody playwright, she's got 300 scenes in the first act and 50 characters." And I went, "Is that weird?" And he goes, "That's really weird." And I thought, oh no, how embarrassing. I've exposed myself for not knowing what I'm doing. But then it went to the Opera House, went really well, and then crickets, nothing after that, nothing. There were just no women playwrights getting gigs. Literally, they were not in programs. And because I went to law school and I knew that women lawyers were starting to have traction in law because they were good at it, I would ask people, why aren't we having women stories on stage? And they said, oh, no one's interested, and they're not very good writers. And I thought, well, this is just scientifically incorrect. And it was based on that I sort of started to get kind of outraged and ask questions. But what came back was oh no, you don't question the system. And so I went to London, because London was a little bit more ahead in that regard, and actually I got invited to be a resident there. But all of that didn't happen until I had my 10,000 hours. I really worked the work, kept writing even when I knew there were no Australian writers getting put on stages. And I think I did it because I really needed to do it, and I was really obsessed. And I got that foundation up just because I would read a play a day for 2 years, and I would dissect the structure, and I would write and write and write and not make any money, and sort of work 3 days a week as a lawyer and 3 days a week as a writer and 1 day a week as a parent, and be a really shit parent for the rest of it. And I have to say, the guy that did yoga and then went surfing and then had breakfast with his family, I mean, he just puts me to shame, honestly. Yeah. But the 10,000 hours had to get up.
Did you get the sense that only you could do what you saw the opportunity in front of you?
Well, I tried to do it the way all the men did it and realised it was stupid, because that's just not how I write. And then you get sort of so many blockades before you in those years, those 12 years where you struggle, that eventually you go, I'm just going to do it the way I want to do it, because that's all I've got. And then you do it the way you want to do it. And a play that I wrote that was a one-person play that I said, try to pitch. I've written a one-person play about a rape that's a bit funny, and see how much response you get. Nothing. But then when it went on, and it was a series of luck and possibilities, and because I'd done those 12,000 hours, that it did go on, and now it's on in literally about 60 different countries right now. And you just think, who would have ever thought? Even my husband was he'd spend his whole life saying to me, write a blockbuster for God's sake, pay off the house or whatever. And then I said, one day I'll be successful, you'll see. And he goes, oh my God, I'm married to an artist, this is a disaster, I married a lawyer. And then what? And he said, and then what happened is, when it was successful, we were both in shock. We're like, oh my God, it happened. So, it was about this desire to actually make a change and actually speak what I wanted to say. And whenever I see there's a knot in something, something that doesn't make sense, I'm kind of I'm magnetised to it. I want to make it make sense, or show people why it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And Tim, when you had the show that you took to Edinburgh, I know that was because of the documentary that was made about that period, how frighteningly tricky and tough it had been you kind of just, it felt to me like you suddenly went, I am just going to be so myself that everyone just has to take notice at some point.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I think Susie, it's interesting. I'm just listening and thinking, and mostly thinking maybe I'm a word butcher, not a word monger. But
join the club.
Love it.
Susie was a person perhaps with a message looking for a medium. And Josh was probably a person with a medium looking for a message or looking for... And I'm more like Josh. Like I took a long time to believe that I was allowed to be an artist, and I was always doing like all these plays and all these bands and amateur theatre and kids theatre and youth theatre, but I think in the back of my head, I'm from Perth, I'm self-taught mostly, and all my good-looking friends had gone off to NIDA, and I just thought, well, I just knew, I felt like a talented person, as in I could make people go, wow, you're good at that, especially with piano and stuff in my own weird way, and I just kept doing it until after I moved to Melbourne in my late 20s, and I was playing lots of cabaret, playing with Eddie Perfect and doing just, cover bands and little bits and flying back to WA to do a play and all that sort of stuff. I eventually just got frustrated that I couldn't get an agent and I couldn't get a record deal, and I understood that what was unusual about me is that I was pretty good at lots of different things, but not a clear sort of winner at one thing. I wasn't an obvious person for an agent to sign. I didn't look like the right thing, and I hadn't been to drama school, and I wasn't an obvious person for a record company to sign because some of my songs were deadly serious and some were really, really silly. And I didn't feel like I fitted anywhere. But just out of frustration, I just went, I'm just gonna do a show where I just show them that I'm clever and have big words and talk fast. And I did that first show, my 18 months before the first Melbourne, was called Naval Cerebral Melodies with Umbilical Chords, which I did at the as part of the Melbourne Fringe in a 30-seater. And it was that show, actually. The one that everyone talks about was 2005, but the 2003 one was the show that made me go, oh, maybe I should call it comedy. They laughed all the time. But also...
With you, not at you.
Yeah, that's right, with me. And I just... But yes, it was really just me going, I think my thing is that I'm multi-skilled and I have to find a medium through which I can be multi-skilled, but I didn't really have anything to say. It was just fucking weird. And then I found things I wanted to say later once I had an audience, or I felt obliged to have something to say once I had an audience.
But I think you always had something to say, Tim. It's just that you...
Yeah, that's what my mum would say. If she wasn't dead.
Sorry. Okay.
Sorry, she died quite recently, so I was still finding the jokes. It's good. Yeah. Still fresh material. You'll have to forgive me.
But I think that
even if she won't.
I think you had something to say, but you didn't realise how original what you had to say was.
Well, yes. I realise, and Susie...
Not to analyse you.
Susie and I don't know each other very well, but we've met a few times, and I've seen some of your work, but actually
I thought we were friends.
Not the big... Yeah, we are friends, but I love you. I mean, just sex is not friendship, Susie. But it is interesting because Susie has a science background and is a lawyer, and I have a critical thinking background and am very interested in science. And it's quite interesting because we are, to the extent that we're unconventional, one of the things we are is artists who aren't particularly arty, as in we're not like, oh, I just love inspiration, I take some drugs, and it's just, I'm much more sciencey in the way I see the world, and I think Susie is too, very analytical. And
ironically.
I don't confess this to many people. I have a degree in electronic engineering.
Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
And
you nerd.
Josh has to tell the story about his time at the Fat Duck there.
Oh, at the Fat Duck. Yeah, no.
Talk about science and food. I mean...
No, I think, when Julie and I...
Very good ad for a science degree, all of us together.
Yeah, totally.
Julie and I got married, and then we decided to go on a working honeymoon for our... to go to the Fat
The
Duck.
royal we.
Yeah.
So we went to the Fat Duck. We worked with Heston and had an amazing time. And Julie worked in the pastry kitchen on service, and I was in the development kitchen. And one day in the development kitchen, we were all standing around. There's probably a dozen chefs, all amazing cooks from all over the world. Basically, it was Heston had summoned, all these amazing people to be great at certain things. And the new pastry chef had just started, and the idea was they wanted to serve a birthday candle to all the guests having a birthday, and it was made out of white chocolate. You would use a cigar cutter to cut the candle to break it off, and then inside was a passion fruit caramel with popping candy all through it. So amazing product, and so everybody's in the room. They're all madly talking about how thick the chocolate is, how the passion fruit should be sweeter or caramel needed to be darker. There's all these really granular conversations happening, and all I'm doing is standing in the back of the room looking at Heston, who hasn't really moved or engaged in the conversation at all. And then he just interrupted everybody after a few minutes and said, when you watch the cricket on TV? And I was looking at him like, oh, this is going to be good. And then everybody was kind of like, we're talking about the candle Heston, because, he was a little bit, like he was out there. And then they said, we're talking about the candle. And then he goes, no, on the TV when you look at the screen and it looks like the advertising's raised up off the grass. And everybody's nodding, going, yeah, okay. And then he went over to his desk, grabbed a card, scribbled on it, started writing. And then he took down a candelabra, this beautiful silver balloon candelabra off the windowsill, put it on the table, and grabbed the candle, put the candle in the top of the candelabra, and we all looked at it, we're like, oh yeah, it looks nice, And then he grabbed the card, and then he pushed the card up underneath the base of this beautiful silver. And what had happened was he'd written happy birthday backwards in a font that you couldn't read, and it had flipped basically and blown up and said happy birthday on the bottom of this candelabra. And that became then the standard for what the birthday serving was at the Fat Duck. And we're all, like me in particular, I had my mouth on the floor. I was just looking at it, just, my God, I've never seen anybody work like that in the moment, just with all these creatives and all these chefs in the room to... they're so invested in the chefy part of the work, and Heston, I think, years earlier had probably realised he doesn't need to compete or engage in what that work looks like because he's put together this group of people that are far better at the work than he is, and his contribution and his gift was the logical question everything kind of theory that he applied to his food, which was the magic kind of dust on top of the Fat Duck, which I think most of us in the room have heard of Heston before, but seeing that firsthand was extraordinary. And I never really saw Heston do a huge amount of cooking, but I can remember the tasks that he would set me, which was making a lemon tart every day for 3 months, which is why when you come to St. Peter, there's probably a lemon tart on the menu. And it's just that PTSD of just trying to get that lemon tart right. And, poaching eggs with him in a room, and he said, can you document them from 61 degrees right up to 90 and see what happens? So you got your spreadsheet ready for him, and it's like 63, it does this, 4, 5, and it's, yeah.
So that
the foundation, it's everything.
Yeah,
Totally.
if you don't know how to poach an egg and you're standing there with Heston in a room, you'd feel incredibly embarrassed, and yeah. Mm.
But that sort of inspiration that also, it's not that you wanted to be like Heston, you just wanted to be sort of liberated to be as
if you stand
as individual as him.
I think you see him, he gets pinned up, in my eyes, who literally got pinned up in my bedroom room as a 15-year-old kid. It was just like, this is the guy, right? Like, I got chefs in my bedroom on posters, like, here's the dish they cooked, and here's, just calm down. And then, you're so obsessed with these people that are doing extraordinary things, and then you bear witness to what that looks like. And I think just watching how comfortable he was, knowing that other people were better at the work than he was, that was then that little thing that I remember so much about it, that when you approach a creative conversation or work that involves, getting enrollment from a larger group of people, when you're trying to do work that I feel matters or that's creatively unique, you need to be able to communicate that and not threaten others and not make them feel belittled or insecure that what they have to contribute is not worthy. Or
So let's talk about what individually we get out of what we do, because ultimately, I think if you don't do something that makes you happy, that's the recipe for not being able to make everyone happy, I suspect. But just want to talk a little bit about that and the notion of, enjoying it so much, but also there's this sort of sense that I want to do something that I've not done before, but I then want to do something that no one's done before. Kind of just that transition. I'd love to sort of get your thoughts on that. If you
Can I do an addendum, because I'm interested in how you feel post prima facie, and whether you feel any pressure. I mean, you've had another hit since then, obviously, and I know you're writing 7 different things. What has that massive success done? Not so much to paying off the house, but does that make you want to innovate more, or does it make you feel like you're trapped into that form?
I never saw the play as being innovative. I mean, that's the really weird thing. It was just something I was obsessed with. And I was obsessed with the fact that I could see something that other people didn't seem to be able to see in a system that runs our whole kind of, the legal system that other people couldn't see. And I guess it was the same as that very, very, very first play, where I could see a community that other people couldn't see operating in a really loving manner, despite the absolute lack of finance, lack of dignity, lack of sanity. And so it's almost like when you see something and there's a sort of knot to it, or a kind of something that you can't, you think, why can't I figure that out? Why is that there?
But that's the difference with you and nearly everyone else in the world, is you see a problem that makes us all despair, and you think, you know what? A play. I'm going to fix it with what sort of nutter thinks they're going to fix a massive global legal problem with a play? And then what sort of nutter does? It's really weird. You're a weird person.
The same nutter that thinks I am a weird person.
So rich.
But I think that's the thing that we realise we all have in common, is that we're quite nerdily obsessed with the thing that we do. And it doesn't make you happy. What it does is it makes the machinery of your mind work for long enough that you stop worrying about yourself. And I think that's kind of the clue.
Perfectly put, yeah. I think that's right. It distracts you. But also, I guess I was asking because I'm just excited by what you do next. But
that is terrifying, though, because I have to say the worst part about being a writer of any sort, I think, and particularly a playwright because it's live, is opening night, because there's 20 reviewers there with pens out, and some of them are poison dipped, and you are just little you from St Kilda in Melbourne that used to ride their bike to school, and you think, why do they all want to do this to me, write about what I've done? But of course it's part of the process, and the day of an opening night, you are not, walking around trying to find a good outfit. You are like in a hotel bed somewhere, shaking and trying to meditate so that you can get yourself there. And I mean, Arthur Miller used to say he'd walk in, then walk out the exit, and then walk around the block and come back at interval to pretend he'd been there and do the same thing for the second half. And I really understand it, because there's nothing worse than I feel like you have to be there to stand by your work, but the truth is the next day could be the worst day of your life.
Susie, my last opening night was just rebooting my Unfunny Evening tour, and I was in Canada about 6-7 weeks ago, and I was so anxious, and my anxiety is not, the material's no good, it's just a more generalised, all these people are paying money and I can't possibly be good enough sort of thing. And it just comes back even though I don't really believe it, but it still sits on you as... I'm not a very anxious person, but what I like doing is reading female contemporary fiction when I'm anxious. So I just look for we used to call it chick lit, but now it's female contemporary fiction. But anyway, I'm just clarifying because we're on a euphemism treadmill. But anyway... I love a rom-com, and I went to this, I I think I was in Vancouver, and I went to a bookshop looking for, and I said to the very hip-looking woman in the bookshop, look, I'm just looking for some contemporary women's fiction. Can I want a rom-com? And she looked at me like I was a piece of shit, and I realised I was in a bookshop that only had sort of Man Booker Prize listed books, and I just started crying in the bookshop.
Oh no!
Because with my opening nights, I have to be on the fucking stage, and I had to walk around the fucking block, Susie Miller.
I know, and that's why I'm a writer and not an actor.
Playwrights.
I know.
I have to sing.
It's true. There's something about, I don't know how people get up on stage and do it.
Well, the good thing is once you're up on
Fucking
stage, all the adrenaline goes somewhere. When
I just sit in the dark somewhere, holding my husband's hand going every 3 minutes, is it okay? Is it okay? He's like, I'm trying to watch the show.
But the audience part of what we all do is fascinating, I think. I mean, particularly when it's immediate and you know how an audience is going to react because you know what you're going to say and you sing and you know what how they're going to respond. But I do think something that drives all of us and is the sense of being generous with your talent, being generous with your skill, and that is the audience get that. I think that's what.
I think that's nice and true, and I feel really passionate about making sure I never go on stage and do a shit job. So although that's a nice sort of framing that it's about being generous with one's talent, I feel like something that probably links us is a really old school work ethic thing. I don't know Josh so well, but I grew up without any sense that being an artist was something that you had a right to do. And so Susie talks about her 10,000 hours, and Josh talks about all the 10,000 lemon tarts, and all those things. In hindsight, it's nice to sit in this room and reflect on their work. But when you're doing the 10,000 hours, or the first of those, or the first tart, you don't know whether it's going to be worth it. You're taking a massive fucking gamble, because most chefs don't end up with their own restaurant, and most playwrights don't end up changing legal systems, and most dickheads don't end up playing as many people as I've got to play. And so when you've done that, and you were quite young when to open a restaurant, weren't you? But we came to it pretty late. That never goes away. So generosity is a nice word, but it's more obligation. I'm like, oh my God, they've paid their money out. I mean, fuck, I better be absolutely my best every single night, even if I did a show a few weeks ago when I got a root canal that finished at lunchtime, and I did a show in Sydney. Some of you would have been there last year, the day after my mum died, and it's like this obsessive, this is not about me. This is about the fucker who's paid their money and saved up.
You just made me realise something really significant, which is the audience don't pay to watch advertising.
Oh.
So maybe that's why it's all so shit.
They pay with their mental health. They pay with their massive anxiety that their lives aren't good enough.
We sow that seed every day as much as possible.
But I mean, it's even more than giving the audience what they want. I think it's also, and maybe this is a slightly sort of weird, nerdy thing, but it's like this desperation to start some sort of conversation. It doesn't have to be a life-changing conversation. You just think, I hope that they've come and they go home and at least someone talks about it to somebody else, that it's not just a waste of time. So I guess even advertising tries to start a conversation.
No,
do you know what I mean?
And obviously I was taking the piss, but advertising like all art, there
good and bad.
There are films that just put out shit messages, films that just try to sell skinny dolls and cover themselves in a veil of feminism. There's films that... Am I allowed to be mean about the Barbie movie yet?
Yes,
you're on your own.
No, it was a very funny film about... I got a backstory about that. I got asked to write songs for that film, but before Greta Gerwig... Oh, shit, no, I can't tell that story. Anyway, basically, I wasn't asked. Someone was interested. Would I be interested? And I said, Mattel's going to produce that film. They're like, yeah, but we're going to undercut all that. It's going to be this amazing feminist film. And I went, Oh, I don't think you'll be able to do that. So maybe I was wrong. But obviously, advertising can do great things and absolutely can start conversations and absolutely can agitate. And,
And even Barbie has now created this outcry for kind of the sweatshops in various countries that are using the Barbie. So
right,
the dark side.
They double bluffed. Yeah, amazing.
I think we talk about it at the restaurant as well. It's, without provocation, there can't be a great deal of change. And I think I always talk about it in briefing half an hour before we start the service. You have no idea the length that people go to put a reservation in to come to the restaurant. Even if it's, a solo guest with a, high-paying job and just want to go out for dinner and just whatever, or just make a booking and in they come. It's obviously important, but then like Julie and I went out last night for my birthday, and we went to a fantastic restaurant. We had an amazing night, but it was mobilising, 4 kids and getting everybody all ready, dressed, brushed hair, all of that stuff, getting them there and then making sure everybody has a great time and all of that. There's a lot of emotional energy that goes into obviously the guest experience arriving at the restaurant, but then also internal to that, there's so much work that goes into creating a restaurant experience that's not only memorable, but, it just makes people feel great and like there's value there and things. But like you said, starting a conversation, the first time that we served fisheye ice cream, that's provocative. And that then, starts a very, significant conversation. It obviously there's some discomfort in reading what that is, but then they eat it and go, wow, this is delicious. And
I'm just triggered by the fact you brush your children's hair.
Yeah. No, but I think a lot of the things that we've done at St. Peter, whether people see it as positive or negative, they will be talking about it tomorrow. They will say that they had bacon made out of fish and they had a tuna cheeseburger, and they've, all these different things that they never thought were possible with fish. Even if it doesn't resonate with 99% of the guests, like I just need one, like to grab it and go, wow, that was extraordinary. Because word of mouth is the most powerful tool for any small business, and the small business can be a restaurant or it can be an individual on stage or whatever.
So is provocation something else that sort of sits behind?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's definitely about provocation, but I don't realise how provocative it is until it's out there. And then, because when you're writing it, as a playwright or a screenwriter, you don't see how big it's going to become on stage, and then someone's going to be on stage each night that has to like redo those words and actually have the experience. And so even as someone that works in collaboration like that when I'm in the room or see a cut of something that's been created or watch an opening night, you think, oh wow, it's so much bigger than me. And the conversation that I started because I was angst-ridden to sort of start that conversation, because I felt like, how come no one else is talking about this? This is really significant. It affects so many people. The silence around that gets burst on stage by somebody that's not you. And so it becomes a different thing. And in fact, what you created becomes part of something that other people have creatively put their genius into. And then it goes on out into the world on its own. I mean, I haven't seen it. I've seen 2 shows in Germany, of which there's 24 shows in Germany. But 24 different productions, but they're all over the world and I won't see them. And in a way I thought, it's okay. It's like your kid's grown up and left home and you're not going to go backpacking with them. So, or maybe I did a bit with my son actually. How embarrassing for him. So, I know it's being recorded. Anyway, I told you I was a crap parent. So I think that the provocation is the thing that makes you want to write it or create it or do something, and then it becomes bigger than you in a way, and you have to kind of grapple with that, because then everyone's looking at you like, what's your next provocation? And you don't know either until you come across it.
Yeah.
You've had moments where things have almost motivated, forced you to create a message that you feel passionate about.
I mean, I think sitting on stage with Susie Miller and talking about my little efforts is a bit ridiculous, but I understand the impulse. I mean, there's definitely a sort of righteous fury, and you think, oh, hold on, I do have a medium, and I'm very proud of those couple of things. I find it a little burdensome. That especially in Australia, a lot of Australians just know me for these two tiny, such a tiny percentage of my work. I don't really want to be known as a divisive provocateur. That feels like a burden I'm not built to carry. But that's the price. And there's absolutely no doubt that was, I just was like, the still call Australia homophobic, and the Cardinal Pell song, it's just like, fuck, this is fucking ridiculous. I'm gonna, but it comes from that impulse, but I'm much, much more strategic than I think I had very clear goals with both those things. One, well, anyway, that's another panel maybe, but my engine now, and I guess what I was getting at when I was asking you, like, what's next, and I'm sure, you're still so young and you've got such a, you've got your work cut out for you keeping your product relevant. So I guess it's similar, but my main engine is boredom, or not boredom, itchy curiosity. So, which is ego as well. I'm like, all right, I did that. I'm going to show them I can do this too. Like there's a little bit of that, but mostly it's just like, why would I keep doing comedy? Because when I wrote Matilda, I was like, oh, I can do that. And then I went, well, maybe I can write a TV show, and that feeling's not going away. And I was going to say it's tiring, but for the people around me, it's tiresome. But yes, I have this novelty. So yes, righteous fury, but novelty is the other massive engine in my
I agree.
Like
you just want to keep building on what you've done already. But my family have this meme of me, which I didn't know about for about 3 years, I might add. And eventually someone dropped it at a dinner, and I went, who's that? And then they went, oh, you said something to her. And it was like this cat on a typewriter, just like typing like a crazy thing, going, in a minute, I'm right. And it actually is me, and it really gave me pause, because I thought,
the cat gave you pause. Oh, that's why you're a fucking genius. You don't even know you're doing it.
I don't even know I'm doing it, exactly. But
I love about a third of the audience were ahead of that.
So, so you realise that, sometimes your obsession is a compulsion as well. Like, I love doing it, but it's not easy to do. I love doing it because eventually I get so caught up in what I'm doing that I'm enjoying something about it's about the process, really.
But I just want to, I guess we're all talking like it's in the past tense a bit, which even though you're continuing to surprise and innovate with new things, and you're opening new restaurants and new challenges, and you're writing new. But I think it would be interesting just to talk a little bit about if someone kind of feels like maybe I have got it in me. What is it going to take to get them to the point that they can do it? Because I'm just interested in whether there's any advice that we could.
Do you know what? Like, to me, it was just deciding you're absolutely going to do it. Like, you're not going to try and find the cheap, easy way through. And you will try at first. In some ways, you'll think, I'm just going to copy what Sam Shepard does then. But there's no point in that. Having said that, you almost do that to realise there's no point in that. And then you absolutely read everything about even hearing Josh talk about some of the things he was talking about, I mean, it's absolutely over my head. I would have no clue about any of that.
Right there with you.
What was it?
Right there with you.
So, but I mean, to me, it's like really get those, just decide this is my real obsession and I'm going to invest in myself and myself doing this and find a way to allow that to happen. So for me, it was working as a lawyer so that I could work the other days and still pay my rent, basically. But it also was just the other days that I worked. I didn't sit around with a pen and a cup of tea and think about great ideas. I just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote till 3 in the morning.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it is the lemon tarts, and it's
a great
again,
metaphor.
There's all sorts of hindsight bias, and you should never listen to people who have succeeded because they were lucky and other people weren't, and you could take advice from someone who failed and get a better result. However, unfortunately, it is you can't be Susie Miller or Josh Nyland. you don't get to choose to be that. You can, however, be a person who writes and writes and writes and writes, and who cooks and cooks and cooks and cooks. And then whether or not you intercept with a large audience, or you have the other things, the balls you and Julia had to say no thanks to the investor, the other attributes beyond fisheye ice cream. Like, you just don't know. And what's more, and I guess not trying to flog my book, but the point I was trying to make in some of those speeches is it's not your concern. Like, whether or not you get a play on Broadway is not the concern of someone writing their first play. The concern of writing their first play is it's going to be on at the old Fitz, and that reviewer that I hate is going to be there. But I'm going to try.
I love him.
I love that you now you would have hated. Yes, I've got one of them as well.
Exactly.
Very famous Broadway guy who everyone doesn't like, and I'm like, oh my God, he sees me. His reviews of me are like the best reviews I've ever had, and I just like, he's the best reviewer ever, even though he ruined the lives of half my friends. But yeah, you know, the everything that these guys are describing is the personality type that gets somewhere with arts, or, you know, or in business, or anything that requires innovation and a skill set. They're the type of people who are just absolutely focused on the short-term goal, which is, for me, when I got asked to write songs for Love's Labour's Lost when I was 18 for a youth theatre production in Perth for $500, I was very, very focused on making that really making my tiny, tiny audience cry. And I approached Matilda, whatever that was, 16 years later, which was to be a 10-week season at Stratford-upon-Avon for a Christmas show. I approached her with no thought about whether it would transfer or whatever. I just went, how is this going to be a really good Christmas show? And I think that's the only wisdom I have is, you might be really successful and you might not, but it's nothing to do with you right now. It's just, what's the fucking project?
Yeah, so true.
Yeah, this is talking through a chef's lens, I suppose, but, you know, when you start cooking, I can remember arched over a sink picking spinach for hours and scrubbing little kifla potatoes, and, you know, because they needed to be. And as you're doing it, in my head, I can remember saying to myself, it's worth it, it's worth it, it's worth it, it's worth it, it's worth it. And you just keep saying to yourself, it's one thing that I need to do, and I'm going to try and do it as fast as I can right now, because that'll make him happy. It'll make the restaurant kind of a bit more organised for tonight and all this. So it's kind of maintaining a microscopic frame on what you're doing right now, but then also carrying a telescopic view that it is for something. You can't put too much pressure on what that something is, but you have to put a little bit of a North Star in your brain, just otherwise you lose your marbles a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, it's also about learning from finding the people that you really admire and learning a bit from them, rather than just showing up to the same person that's going to put you down all the time. Like deciding, well, who are the people that I really admire that have done a good job of this?
And you have to have a rocket pack on your back as well. Like, you've got to believe in yourself. I mean, I had days off. Like, I worked the 5 days in the restaurant I was at that, you know, you'd do 70 whatever hours in the week and you're exhausted, but then you realise you've signed yourself up to work at a butchery 2 days a week, to put parsley on the little, you know, trays and set up everything, all because at 3 o'clock, once the shop starts to close down, the butcher's going to show you how to break down the carcass of a lamb that you never got to do, because the meat that you get in the restaurant is conveniently packaged in a way that's ready for the pan. And it's a skill that I don't have, but I need it, and I need it now. And I'm going to keep showing up every week after week after week, even though I'd prefer to be in bed. So that's the attributes I feel.
Obsession, yeah.
It's obsession, and it's just, if you've got a desire to do something for yourself, like you feel like you've got something to say, just commit to it. Even if it's not perfect, just ship it. Like, I mean, I wrote the whole fish cookbook in 8 weeks on my mobile phone, just because I don't like laptops, and I just did it on my phone. And it was really exhausting, but at the end of it, I just said, here, it's done. And that was it. And they framed it up, and that won 2 James Beard Awards, and lots of amazing people all around the world loved what it was.
This is why you can't be him.
No,
it's absolute bullshit. It's like, it's a complete flair, and you were born with it, and too bad, everyone else.
You've got to...
But I knew writing it wasn't perfect. There were things in there that aren't, but I just wanted to put a pin in it and just go, yeah, we did it. And then creatively in my own head, I could move on. I didn't have to clutch into what I'd done before. I could keep going. And I think that's a question that I'll probably ask you guys later, is there is that moment between age 28, 35, as a chef anyway, where there's that, you know enough, and you're like, you've got the technical foundation there to do something with it. And so you take more risks and like things happen and there's momentum, but then you get to this moment of consolatory kind of patch where you're like, fuck, if I try and innovate and create beyond where people see me now and I miss, then what the fuck happens?
That's so true. Like the moment you can't just, the moment just happens to collide with you, and that's luck. There's nothing you can't make that moment happen.
There's two things I've got to do. One is that we're running out of time and we're going to finish with a bang. Which I need to leave time for. But I do just want to say thanks very much. I've learned a lot. Hopefully everyone else has here. So please, maybe if we could just thank the panel.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And inadvertently, imagine getting this brief on your desk, everybody. The Opera House is turning 50 years. They say, write us something to celebrate that, Tim.
Yeah.
But I think it probably more than anything, more than us trying to capture what it is that's the spirit of breaking convention, I think you managed to do it with this song. Maybe just want to give us a bit of an intro and then we'll
Tell us about the room. Who was in the room?
Oh, yeah. Well, Joe Bean, who's in this room, was in the room. And I think were Pippa and Michael are here too. The producers, I don't think they were in the original room. But my manager said, you know, the Opera House wanted to do a campaign for their 50th year and they're interested in you being involved. And I went, I don't really do advertising. And then I thought, it's a fucking Opera House. It's not really an ad, is it? And my manager.
They definitely don't pay.
Yeah, well, most of the money went on the screen, as it bloody should. But the brief was amusing. I mean, I don't know if I'm a very good. I don't know what I appear to be thinking in those meetings, because I just sort of and even just the physical structure of it being so unconventional and so in the face of the rest of Sydney's architecture and the, you know, and what is that as a metaphor? But not only that, who's the target audience? What are we trying to say about the Opera House to the people? It's the people's house. It's our doors are always open, you know, and that we celebrate diversity and bravery and then other little things like, oh, you know, we're hoping the Utzon family, the architect's family, are going to come over. So, you know, you could acknowledge, you know, Utzon. A lot of you will know the story of him sort of leaving 3/4 of the way through the project and never came back to see the building because he clashed so badly with the local government at the time and all this sort of stuff. And it felt like an opportunity, but I could not figure out how it was going to be how I was going to make it not look like a Qantas ad, how I was going to not let it be sort of shiny and like a product, because it, unfortunately, despite the fact that it is an absolute icon of unconventionality and artistic bravery and everything it represents is what they were saying. The fact is, it's on a lot of fucking tea towels, you know. It is like a stamp, the first thing that happened is I had this idea sitting in London on David Thewlis's piano, and I suddenly had an idea that those of you who have seen the song will understand the idea, but I'll let you the rest of you watch it. And I wrote like 2 verses and sent it to them, and the subtext or even the text of my pitch was, this is my idea, and it's my own, it's the idea. And so I absolutely no offence
I responded in like floods of tears and thought, this is why I moved to Sydney from Melbourne.
Oh,
I have
did
to
you?
say,
Great.
yeah, absolutely.
There you go. I mean, I sort of went, I think this is the right idea for me. If you're going to get me to do it, I think it's this. And I thought, they're going to have to really work hard to get their heads around this, because it's the opposite of what they wanted. And they pretty much immediately all said yes, both the Opera House and the Monkeys, the advertising company. And after that, they got Kim Gehrig, who's the best advertising director in the world and is an Aussie. And once she came on board, suddenly it was a whole other level.
Well, we should watch it. Thanks again, everybody, for coming along, and we'll play out with...
Play It Safe.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
You gotta keep it simple. Life is like a song. There are tunes that folk are used to, so if you want 'em to sing along, just keep it simple. You ought to play it safe. Life is just a game. People like the rules as written, so just give 'em more of the same. No one likes a smart ass. No one likes it complicated. If you want to go the distance, find the path of least resistance and just take it. You don't want to stick your neck out.
You don't want to stick your neck
They'll
out.
take your head off if you do.
They're gonna rip your head
Just
off.
sit up the back and judge others.
Hey, sit down.
It'll keep 'em from judging you.
If you're too hard to stomach, you'll never amount to nothing. Ain't that something? No one cares what you have to say.
You
Just
gotta
shut up and
play
play
the
the
role
role
you're
you're casting.
All the world's a stage.
You see, all the world's a stage.
All the men and women merely
So just say the lines you're given exactly as they're written, and for God's sake, act your age. No one likes a show off. No one likes a clown. Just make sure you don't stand out in the crowd. That way they can't cut you down. You gotta build your walls around you. You build them straight and make them square. That way you'll blend in with the background. That way no one will point and stare.
Does nothing for the average Australian. No one cares about the arts. No one cares about architecture.
It is a waste of taxpayer dollars.
It is a failure.
You gotta stick to your convictions. You gotta nail down your views.
Nail 'em down.
You wanna steer clear of the discomfort you feel when you walk in another person's shoes.
You don't need that.
You gotta work out who your team is, then wear the badge with pride. Find a box that makes you comfortable and then stay back inside. On the first day the Lord gave you television. On the next he delivered a couch.
He delivered.
Tell me how to explain all this content. If the universe wanted you out and about, toe the line, don your suit, hide your truth, wipe your tears, don't cause trouble, find your bubble, stick to black and white ideas, play it safe, know your place, know your lines, know your limits, find a doctrine, get it locked in, build a box and stay in it, toe the line, don your suit, hide your truth, wipe your tears, don't cause trouble, find your bubble, stick to black and white ideas, play it safe, keep it beige, keep it simple and same-ish, leave the weird ideas to the Danish. You gotta play it safe. Your mind is like a house. If you keep it locked up tight, you just might keep the world out.